All right, hello everyone. Happy Women's Day. And today we celebrate the strength, resilience, and brilliance of our women everywhere. So let's make some noise for the incredible women in our lives. Sometimes women aren't exactly given spaces to speak at discussions, but today we're making our own discussions. Today, I have two amazing women joining us here today, Hira Wajahat, who is from Pakistan, and Dima Daraz from Jordan. So can you both just please introduce yourself?
Dima's on mute.
Oh, Dima, you're on mute. Maybe just unmute yourself.
Yeah. Sorry, you know.
No
Hello,
worries.
Emaan. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here today. Dima Daraz from Jordan. I work as a sustainability and DRG in Jordan Ahli Bank. And why Emaan invited me is like we hosted last year ARCOI, which is the Regional Conference of Youth, where we provided a platform for youth and women to come together and discuss climate action and how can we combat this as youth in MENA region. Thank you, Iman.
Thank you so much, Dima, for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having us here, Iman. I'm Hira Wajahat from Pakistan. I primarily work as an ecosystem builder, so I work a lot with startups and new ventures who are trying to build their businesses to do some global problem challenges and solutions for climate action, social impact businesses. And I think my relevance to this whole topic of women is I run a cohort of some amazing women entrepreneurs across Pakistan. They're part of a program we call Women in Sustainable Entrepreneurship. So they're all wise women. And I think they're building some of the most amazing solutions to do with agriculture, waste management, empowering the communities they're working in. So, yeah, that's the work I do, and I'm super proud of. So, thank you for having us here today to talk about it.
Of course. Thank you so much, Hera. And you should definitely talk about the cohort later on in our live. And also speaking of that, later on in our stream, Amber Nuttall, who is from the United Kingdom, is going to be joining us later in our session as well. So, firstly, I'd like to ask you, Hera. You've been deeply involved with like climate policy and like activism. So, what role do you see women playing in shaping national and global climate policies?
I think possibly any and every role you can think of. The reason being that unfortunately we're still an underrepresented sector or gender in decisions and thoughts and policies and practices that affect us as much as they affect men. So the thing is that like everybody has their viewpoint, right? So obviously when men are formulating these policies and giving recommendations, they do it from the purview of what affects them the most. But if we need to have an understanding and solutions in line with what affect women and children, then we need to have those voices in this policy and regulation space as well. And interestingly, yesterday I was looking at this LinkedIn post that was actually talking about if you asked AI to imagine a future which is led by women, the kind of visuals that came up were primarily women in the home, women as housemakers, or if women in the corporate sector in a very old age kind of a visual where it was like women were defined with having to wear these short skirts and pencil heels to appear to be making an impact or climbing a corporate ladder. So I think that the analysis of the bottom line was that even AI, because it's trained on existing references, is not able to imagine women of the future because it only picks up what it's trained on. So I think this is a conversation or narrative that needs to change, honestly, to have the voices of these missing, people need to be included in all sorts of policy that's being developed.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's a really big problem since, as you mentioned before, like women are still the most like obviously underrated. I'd say in a way in like spaces like the climate space, and just the example you gave of AI just like highlights the misogyny in the world and like the stereotypes of women and how like even AI is trained on such like beliefs and topics. So that's definitely a problem that the world needs to look on, in my opinion. So, Dima, next I'd like to ask you, since you're from Jordan and like last year you hosted Arkoy in the MENA region. So, the climate challenges in the MENA region specifically are unique to that space. So, like, what are the biggest environmental concerns in Jordan specifically, and how are women playing a role in tackling them?
Yeah, as you mentioned, MENA faces like a unique challenges when it comes to climate change. One of them that Jordan is one of the most water scarce country in the world, as well as what we have like a humid, we have I mean arid climate, which is like add on the challenges we face in Jordan. What role women plays in that, and how we can compact this. We see it here in Jordan that women face these problems and challenges firsthand as they moved from like staying at home and just being waiting for the, water and money to come to their homes. Now they need to get out, get their you know daily needs, and etc etc. So we see it mostly in local communities where women need to travel for miles when they pay extra, when they working in like undesirable works to get money to buy water, to buy like food, etc etc. um what else, like in addition to like environmental challenges we see in Jordan and MENA region, we see traditional norms that women usually they have to stay at home, but like nowadays that's not an option. You need to get out, get working, and like have money to stay alive. um but that like faces like there's a couple of challenges comes with that. One of them like women and SMEs, and as you mentioned, like women they are trying to have their, they are entrepreneurs and they are like trying to have their work to their startup. But we see it in Jordan and in MENA, they have a lot of access to funds. There's a set of regulation. You need like to have a certain number of male to female ratio to register your company, etc etc. So yeah, I think these challenges like hinders what we can do when it comes to climate action, and we can address that by having like more funds um, for women working in climate action, for entrepreneurs, for startup, for even like a grassroots movements to work on project unique to their challenges.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. And like you also brought up that in spaces like Jordan, the MENA region, and also it's a thing in Pakistan, women in climate action and like women in basically all spaces, they face like social barriers, right? And like cultural barriers. Like,
Yeah.
so what challenges have you encountered like in these like social barriers, and how have you overcome them?
Yeah, so I used to work in agriculture, and yeah, whenever we have like site visit, they told us like, "What are you doing here?" Like, if there is a worker over there, you can't go over there. You need a man with you to come to accompany you in your site visit. But like, I see it fascinating that women and local women's, they break that norm. They are now working in farms. They are leading their farms, they are managing their farms, but still like it's a small percentage. The norms are still here. Women daily faces like they are daily facing these norms and trying to break this stereotyping of like women, the only thing they can do, just stay at home.
Yeah, exactly. So, Hera, what I'd like to ask you next, climate justice is important. Like, I've seen a lot of protests, especially if you go to like spaces like COP, for example, in COP 29, there were a lot of protests on climate justice, but it's often like overlooked. So, like, how can we ensure that marginalized communities, as Dima also mentioned, marginalized communities, like especially women, who, how can we ensure that marginalized communities get climate justice and are at the forefront of climate solutions?
I think the first way is to involve them in any and all conversations that are happening. So if you are at the COP as a contingent, whether you're representing a country or a youth group, you need to make sure that you have a balance with the gender or with the age groups that are being represented over there. And then, obviously, voices being heard doesn't mean that you just, get people together and say, what do you think? It means you
Yeah,
actually take what they think, put it into your policy and other guidelines and documents, and try to actually make something out of it, or change the way you approach business, change the way you approach branding, narratives, development projects, initiatives, whatever. And then I think some of what Dima was just saying is so relevant because, and that would actually be my third point also, that to increase more funding towards initiatives that are being led
Exactly.
by women, particularly to support them as business entrepreneurs, to support them as scientists, because a lot of the entrepreneurs that I work with are actually in the deep tech space, which means that they're in the lab producing some kind of new biological, chemical, physical product that they will eventually commercialize as a technology. And then of course when you have topics like climate finance and uh, mm, this regenerative economy, and then adaptation resilience funds, all of these need. So right now if you look at the ticket sizes, it's like somebody saying I will give 200,000 euros to do a project, but the person who is doing the project needs to also put in 50,000 euros or 100,000 euros or something.
yeah,
It's not possible. You need to come up with a better modality mechanism of funding where you try to make like a collaborative consortium. So maybe if you need to have this backing partner, the partner needs to be somebody else, but the actual implementator or implementation partner of the project, or the person who's spearheading visioneering this, needs to be somebody else. And the smaller entrepreneurs, the scientists and researchers, etc., they need to be involved in this process throughout. But what I did like also, what about what Dima was saying, because I remember one field visit that I went on where it was exactly the same in Pakistan. So, you need to take a man with you. You're going to the
yeah,
field, you're going to the, and it was with the microfinance bank. So it was really interesting. And then we go there and we're like, okay, we want to talk to some of your customers who've taken a loan from you, with different products that you had for the communities. And it turns out that they had a very big portfolio of women who had taken the loan, but when we went to the village, the women wouldn't come out of their homes, and we were told that only you can go inside to speak to the women because there's a cultural kind of a restriction. So I found it so entertaining. And then I was just telling the person who came with me, you made me spend like 10 days waiting till somebody was available to take me. And when I went there, it's like, they didn't want you there. They just, I could have gone anyway, right? So it wasn't really like, what's the big issue about you need a man to go with you? So, I mean, I'm
Yeah,
not saying we do need to respect cultural traditions, but I just think sometimes it's a bit unnecessary, and we need to work around these issues and not, make them like the pain points. There are bigger pain
exactly.
points that need to be addressed.
Yeah, exactly. There are many spaces, like especially in Pakistan, also in the MENA region, where like these like cultural barriers and cultural norms, of course, as you said, we do need to respect like against maybe floods we faced in 2022. So like, what are the top 3 points, Hira?
I'm really sorry I missed your question because I think if it was my side or your side, but could you repeat your question, please?
Oh, no worries, no worries. So, as I said, with Pakistan facing increasing climate disasters, what are the top 3 priorities you believe we need to focus for long-term resilience?
I think one, you need to have a lot more education and awareness. Even within communities on how to understand and manage challenging situations. I mean, I think Pakistan, it's great because Pakistan is a very resilient country in general. Things happen and you are able to respond really fast. But I think the response is still kind of coming from, if you are in the city, then you will collect money and then you will come to rural communities, or you need the men to mobilize to enable the women and the youth. So I think that's something that needs to be, so the preparedness, the mindset, the education, this needs to change. So everybody needs to be aware of that these are issues that could happen. Like in the old days when there was, or in some countries still, when there is threat of war, and everybody's prepared that if something happens, you need to respond in a certain way. Similarly, countries like ours that have a high risk of climate change need to be prepared in the same way, that if
Exactly.
something happens, you need to prepare in this way. Then the second way, I think, is again to um, empower communities, that is sadly still lacking. And by empowering communities, and it's interesting because a lot of communities in Pakistan are quite matriarchal. So the head of the family would be a woman, the income generation or the bread earner is a woman, the person working in the fields to make the crop is a woman. So then in situations that require quick decision making, that require, what should we do, that this decision making input needs also be, to be inclusive, because that's the thing. I do feel that, well, I personally think that multitasking is not a thing, but if we are able to prove that multitasking exists, then definitely women can multitask and not men. It's like literally in the last 3 days, I've been looking at these different. Actually, it was really interesting. There's another thing I saw. I was reading online. So I'm actually a PhD student, so I'm reading a lot. And so this one thing I was reading was, they showed these visuals. One was like this like a pathway in like a park with the trees on the side, and the other was like an entrance to a train station or like a suburb, like a small door, you had to walk through it. And they asked men and women to view, and to and then they identified with this like a heat map, like where the visuals went. And the heat map for where the men was looking was literally a tunnel vision,
Oh my
straight down.
god.
And the heat map for where the women were looking were like, like all
I
around,
love it.
all around and in between, right? So you have to be more prepared about what's happening around you, if you're at threat or risk or a danger. So you're in your mind calculating, everything, and then taking. So I think this is the kind of mindset and thought process that needs to be incorporated. So definitely having this, and then creating, so co-creation is something that's really important, and then creating safe spaces for this co-creation. If we can really enable that, it, disaster is not going to stop. Climate change is too massive for people to stop it, but having people prepared and knowing how to respond, knowing how to behave, that is important. Of course, this behavior is twofold. One part is the mitigating part, where you make sure that they change behavior to not make things worse. But the second part is also a adaptation and response part, where if something
Exactly.
happens, how do you react and respond? So I think this is really critical.
Yeah, exactly. Since you also mentioned like education, right? So I think education is one of the most important things we need to do for like mitigation, adaptation. So like without education, we can't really solve the climate crisis. So what I'd like to ask now, both of you, what role does education play in like combating climate change?
Yeah, I think like the old saying says that if you can't, yeah, if you don't, if you, we can't manage what we don't know. Like we need to know what we are dealing with. We need to get more specific, like, are we compact? We can't compact climate change as a whole. We need to take a small part of, like, this a huge problem, focus on it, and be the master of how we can solve this climate change from that area, from that angle. So education, and I see it. Let's go back to, like, schools. I see you, like, as a perfect example. When I was young, around like 5, 6, 7, I didn't know anything about the climate change. We used to hear global warming, but if we got more information about climate change when we were in schools, I think that we could have done something
Mm-hmm.
back in the days. Like, I think and that comes to the community. I'm not talking about like a big scale project. As simple as, if we knew that back in the days, we 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 might come up with weight segregation project on a school level. We might come up with a hackathon in university. We might come up with any kind of a project that help us combat climate change. But the thing is, like, unfortunately, climate change is a new topic in MENA region. It's like maximum 10 years. Like, before that, all of all people were talking about, they are scientists, not, people doing business, or people trying to compact that from their small ways. So I do believe that climate change and climate action should be um, a big part of education, and that's what are we trying to do here in Jordan. We are trying to do upskilling program. We are trying to do conferences. We are trying to do awareness session with universities, with the schools, even like with businesses. What I'm like, now I work in a bank, and I can see that people working in banks, they aren't really getting the grasp out of what climate change mean, and how this will impact their business, how this will impact the operation of banks, etc., etc. So I do believe, like, we need to focus more in education,
Mm-hmm.
invest more. Uh, I don't know, like, how we can mobilize that amount of money to go to education, but hopefully we can do that. Yeah, that's my 2 cents.
I mean, adding on to what Dima was just saying, let me tell you a story from 2010. Okay, it seems a long time ago, and to be very honest, it was a long time ago. So 2010, I was working on a project in rural communities in Pakistan, which was to do with women and children. The idea was to educate women and children about good nutrition, because nutrition, and of course in 2010 climate change wasn't an issue. The issue was
Yeah.
health, nutrition, education, gender, social issues, right? So who knew about climate? Everything was fine, right? People were growing strawberries in Punjab and Pakistan and making milkshakes and giving to their kids. So um, so this program kind of introduced in a school, in village schools, in city schools, the schools that were covered by an NGO. And 2 hours a week they would talk to the kids about health and nutrition, good eating habits, exercising, cleanliness, hygiene, whatever. And then, as part of the project, of course, you went before the classes started, and you kind of understood what the kids felt, what the mothers felt, what the teachers felt about health and nutrition in general. And after the whole school year ended, then you would go back and sort of try to understand what had happened, what had changed during the year. And there was some of the stories that I would like to share with you. So one teacher told us this, like, one girl came to school one day and she was just crying, 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 right? And like, they asked her why she's crying, and then they found out that the previous night, maybe, her mother cooked rice and potatoes, and the teacher had told them that rice and potatoes are both starch, so you can't eat them together. So she told her parents that, I can't eat this because teacher has said that we can't have rice and potatoes. They're both forms of starch. So somebody maybe scolded her, or like they said that, stop and then just eat whatever's cooked, right? And you can't tell us what to do and what not to do. So that the next day the kid is just like, I got scolded at home because I told them what to do. And then one of the mothers narrated how she was using a knife to cut meat, and then she started cutting vegetables, and her son told her that you can't use this knife that you've used to cut meat to cut vegetables, because you need to wash it, or you need to like keep two separate knives, different for the meat and for the vegetables, right? Because meat has
Yeah.
bacteria. So these are actual stories of change. Or like there was one school where we went, and in that school, interestingly, there was no change or impact whatsoever. And this actually connects with this session today, because the faculty in that school were all male. So there
Oh.
were men who were doing, because it was a very remote location and there weren't too many women in the area, or good. So the men were doing this health and nutrition curriculum. So obviously, as teachers, they were trained and they were communicating, but the schools where women were involved, they were also inviting the mothers, and the mothers were participating, and then things were happening. In this school, the mothers weren't as active, and also because all the teachers were male, the kind of change or the kind of stories of impact weren't really profound in this school. There wasn't so much impact, but in all the schools where there were women involved as teachers, and then also engaging mothers, because obviously the male teachers didn't engage in the community mothers. They used to talk to fathers, didn't have the same kind of impact.
Of
But
course.
I think just learning from this, and also the point that I'm trying to make, is that behavior change and change of awareness, things that need to be done, it's a very slow process, but it comes with education. It comes with engaging women. And so even if the burning issues have changed from health and gender and education to climate change, the bottom line still remains the same. The process still remains the same. You have to educate, you have to engage, you have to involve everybody and talk to them end to end. Like, even when we're talking about business, we're always talking about supply chain. You source from somewhere, you produce, and then you deliver, and then you use and you dispose. So you need to do the same with communities and people. You need to engage everybody. You need to engage them from the start. To understand about things, you need to engage them on action. How will you resolve these situations? What would you do? What can we do together? So I think that is basically the bottom line of how important education is. You can actually
Exactly.
see changes happening just when you've educated or created awareness.
Exactly. That's really great points. And I especially like the story, which also leads me to another question I wanted to ask. Like, you said the story about how the little girl came crying back to school because she got scolded, and like the parents wouldn't know, like didn't listen to her on what she was taught, right? So I think that's also another problem in the climate space. Is that like the older generation, they don't want to break free from the traditional values, or like they sometimes people are still denying climate change. So like how do you basically like overcome that?
It's you can only keep trying to create as much change and trying to talk to people and engage people as possible. You would be surprised to know that it's not just old people or people who are, stuck in their ways. If you go to some countries where people are more educated and not as old, and some communities, they will still deny climate change, even though they're probably worst affected by climate change. And they see hurricanes and tornadoes and all sorts of issues. But if you say climate change, it's a crime. You can be sent to prison for saying climate change. So I don't think it's a matter of which community you're from, or how you're stuck. It's a perhaps a very cultural thing.
Yeah.
um, you and then the engagement of how you engage, how you involve. So it's I don't think there's one size fits all. So you have to really, you know kind of understand where people are coming from, what is inhibiting them, and then try to address things in a way that they will understand. So
Yeah.
um, it's just a matter, but I think the bottom line is why a good needs assessment is very important. is exactly because you need to understand where this community or the people you're working with are coming from. um, Otherwise it's just like middle-aged white men telling you what to do and what not to do, which is really
Uh-huh.
redundant because they're not Asian, they're not brown, they're not women.
You can say United States, it's fine.
They've never, and it's not just the United States. So let me be
Yeah,
impartial here. I will not take one name. It's not just the United
Mhm.
States.
yeah,
Yeah.
Uh, but I mean, the thing is that it's not just governments and policies. It's also a lot of the
Yeah.
product. So if I look at business, a lot of product that's manufactured to be used in the global south is developed by people who've never been to the global south,
yeah,
Mhm.
which is a problem, right? So I mean, the idea is you need to understand culture, you need to understand what drives or motivates people. And I think there's some great examples of that, especially from the Middle East, Jordan community development initiatives, Africa, in Asia as well, where you've engaged communities that have different religious perspectives, different gender perspectives, in actually collaborating to do really impactful things together. Whether it's housing, whether it's climate action, whether it's doing something against the energy crisis or whatever. But it's how you've engaged and talked to people and heard people that really matters. So whatever the problem is with climate change, and as long as people feel they're not being heard, they will be resistant forever.
yeah.
And when people feel that they're being heard and they're something that their point of view has been kept in mind, they will change the way they think. But just to conclude, it's still cultural. You never know who's going to behave in what way. So
Yeah, I think especially what you said is that some people that are not like accustomed to the global south, there I've seen this a lot in discussions, especially in college spaces, that people don't really incorporate like cultural religious values in them, and like they don't really like consider it maybe, and that's I think like a really big problem that's also faced in like stages such as COP or like other global United Nations conferences, for example. So as we draw to an end, I'd like to ask both of you, is there any message you'd like to give to the women and for the children that are watching, just a one-liner message?
Yeah, like my message will be for people who are creating spaces for women to come and join and participate in climate action, that you need to ask them what kind of spaces they want, what the kind of participation they need. Like you can't do a space and say to women, come to my space and do it at like 9 p.m. and expecting women to come. And there's like some norms in MENA. You need to work around norms, you need to work around um, traditional values, because I do believe as people living in global south that we are like our indigenous people are, and our traditional and regional values taught us how to be sustainable, how to save and maximize the use of resources. So we need to take that into consideration whenever we create a space, whenever we invite people to come to our spaces. The message will be as well that we don't need like tokenism and like just a tick in the box that women are children and youth is here. We need an actual and meaningful
Exactly.
participation on the table and in the decision making table. We got fed up from like we invited this woman, we invited this young people, group of young people to come and join us in this conversation, but when they are on the table, they don't actually listen to them. They are here like just to take the checklist. Youth here, children here, etc.,
Mm.
etc. So my message will be: do better. We can do better. We have the resources to do better. So, and we can help you do that. We know how to create a safe space to youth, to women, to children, to everyone, to even men, like to come and be vulnerable, to come together as a community to try and solve climate uh, climate, like, challenges. Thank you, Iman.
Thank you, Dima. Hira, would you like to?
Yeah, I just feel that, everybody individually has some kind of skill. It's not the same skill for everyone, it's different, but we all have some skills. And it takes collective effort and collective skill to make things happen. So we all need to, do whatever we can, little by little. And then when everybody is doing things together, it creates a profound impact. And that's what we should aim. So, we should do what we can do best, find the networks, groups, and it doesn't matter which group, which country you're working with, but find people who think like you, work together, do things. And when you do things together, then other great things happen. So that's it.
Right. Thank you so much, Hira, and thank you so much, Dima, for joining this conversation today. It's been such an amazing and great conversation, and I'm sure watching. Thank you for joining once again, Dima and Hira.
Thank you for
Thank you,
having us, Iman.
Iman.
It's lovely
Have a
being
nice
here.
day.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.